Losing in overtime feels a lot different when you're cheering for the team that by all means should have won the game in regulation. Waited 11 days for this. I'm getting real sick of moral victories. What's cracking, everybody, and welcome back to KrakenRnR for the first time in about a week and a half, as the Kraken are finally back from their COVID extended Christmas break. The current dumpster fire of Seattle sports aside, I hope all of you had a good and restful Christmas break. I know I certainly had a pretty good one. Restful, maybe not so much. I've got a baby in the house, so yeah, I think that tells you about all you need to know. But it definitely has been a good last week and a half, especially with the snow thrown in that we got in the Seattle area, which at least I'm personally a big fan of. Plus, I also managed to somehow get even more Kraken-related stuff for Christmas, which is a good thing, and if any of you can relate to that, I'd love to hear about it down in the comments. But yeah, as far as Seattle sports are concerned, it was not a particularly good week and a half. For one, the Seahawks continue to fall apart in spectacular fashion, and for the Kraken, even though they hadn't been playing, things weren't really a lot better for them, as they continued to have players go on and off COVID protocol. And the worst news of all, Brandon Tanev, who was again injured late in the last game against Edmonton, was placed on the IR, and we later found out that it's an ACL injury for him that will end his season. So, yeah. All that happened to the Kraken is they just had their heart and soul ripped out. Fantastic. Exactly what this team needed. As far as the COVID end of things goes, the longer break, on the one hand, does allow them to get guys like Alexiak, Larson, Susie, and Gord back without missing as many games as they would have otherwise missed due to COVID. But as they come back, they are still now without Dunn, Donato, and Appleton, at least for a couple of games. And, at least in this first one back against the Flyers, a little bit of extra finishing power on the offensive end that they could have gotten from guys like Dunn and Donato specifically is something that I think they were missing in this one, as they do end up falling to the Flyers 3-2 in overtime. Of course, to be fair with the Flyers, they, like most other teams in the NHL right now, were also missing some guys due to COVID protocol, including their starting goaltender in Carter Hart. Not that it seemed to matter, as Martin Jones, who was backing him up and starting this game, seemed determined to make up for years of missed saves with the Sharks, all in one game tonight. As we do get into the game, out of the gates it was actually the Flyers who got the better start in this one, though that would not turn out to be the theme of this one. It's well defended by Seattle, who does quickly take over momentum and start getting pressure in the other end, which lasts up until just after the 4-minute mark, when Eberle eventually gets caught for cross-checking, and it's Philadelphia to the power play. And this, the first Tanev-less penalty kill for the Kraken, does not last very long and does not go very well, as just seconds into it, a couple of passes find JVR in the slot, he takes a quick shot, and it gets past Grubauer and into the net to give Philadelphia the early 1-0 lead. So I guess after a week and a half of not playing, some things still never change. Although this is definitely one of the things I would have liked to see change, but still it's another early deficit for the Kraken. To Seattle's credit, they at least don't allow this early Philadelphia goal to change the momentum of the game, as they pretty much pick up right where they left off, continuing to control the puck and spend a lot of time in the Philadelphia end of the ice. And they are even creating some pretty good scoring chances, though early on, nothing's getting past Jones. Eventually, this relentless Seattle pressure is rewarded with a Philadelphia mistake in the form of a penalty, which does send Seattle to the power play with a chance to get even with a power play goal of their own. Now, it has to be said that with this first Kraken power play, things did not look pretty whatsoever, as they had a very hard time getting organized and getting anything going in the offensive direction. Even though they'd had no trouble doing that 5-on-5 for the last 10 minutes or so, but still, 5-on-4 it seems to be something they're having trouble with, as Philadelphia is actually getting the better of the chances and even puck possession time through the first minute to minute and a half of this Kraken power play. Eventually, with about 30 seconds left in the power play, they do finally get set up in the Philadelphia end, and a passing play around the outside finishes with a one-timer from Gord, and it's a laser into the back of the net. The Kraken somehow, even though they tried really hard not to do so for the first majority of the power play, do score and tie this game up. It's now 1-1. And for Gord, this is one of the hardest shots I think he's probably had in his entire career. I mean, not from a difficulty perspective, but he definitely put just about everything he had into this shot, and it paid off as it gets past Jones in a hurry. For the rest of the first period, the Kraken continue to control the puck well and spend a lot of time in the Philly end of the ice, getting chances off on the Flyer net, including a very good chance for Donskoy, who has some soft hands where he manages to beat Jones but just bobbles the puck a little bit too much on the final move to try to get it around Jones's foot and into the side of the net, as he once again just misses his first goal in a Kraken uniform. And again, some things just never seem to change. Again, Philadelphia is able to survive the Kraken pressure and get to the first intermission with the game still tied at 1. The second period then starts out pretty similar to how the first started, with some early pressure by the Flyers, quickly followed up by the Kraken getting into their game and pushing right back going the other way and reestablishing pretty much what we saw for the majority of the first through the early part of the second. And after a few minutes of that pressure, they do end up getting another power play out of it. And it has to be said, with this power play, it looks considerably better than the first one. Much more controlled, really start to finish. Although it's maybe a little bit too controlled, as they maybe spend a little bit too much time passing the puck and not enough time shooting it. And eventually, this one is killed off. So, in spite of the fact that it was a much better power play in every strategic way from the first one, it ends up coming up empty while the first one succeeded. Go figure. But at least coming out of the first unsuccessful power play of the game, once again, the Kraken are able to maintain control and pressure really throughout the rest of the second period, as they dominate the second period pretty much from start to finish, with really the only two hiccups in the period being sometime a couple of minutes after the failed power play, where they do let up a couple of shots off on Grubauer, which, to be fair, the first of those shots 11 minutes into the period was the first shot that they allowed on Grubauer in over 13 minutes of game time. Of course, fortunately, Grubauer is able to wake up from the nap that they allowed him to take for a while in time to make that save, and then a couple of more shortly after it. The Kraken do get back in control and maintain that control through the end of the second period, and a second penalty kill that goes considerably better than the first one. Which, again, isn't saying much, but they actually killed this one off pretty well. So already at this point, this is really feeling like a game that the Kraken are in complete control of. And really, the only thing that stood between them and potentially a substantial lead at this point in the game is, surprisingly, a Philadelphia Flyer goaltender, and even more surprisingly, Martin Jones. And right out of the gates in the third, he was going to get tested again, as less than a minute into the third period, the Kraken are, for the third time in the game, onto the power play. And with this third Kraken power play, it has to be said at this point, there did seem to be a noticeable pattern starting with the Kraken power play units, at least in this game, where the first unit really had a hard time getting much of anything going in any one of their power plays. The second one, they did at least have control of the puck, unlike the first and third one with this one. But really, all night long, when the Kraken did have chances on the power play, it was the second unit that was creating them. Even without Vince Dunn, who has probably been their best power play quarterback so far to this point in the season. Which does kind of make me wonder, with Soucy having been the quarterback of that second unit in this game, if it's not maybe worth looking at him and Dunn going forward as a potential option, which I know, don't question the captain, and he has been their lead of the first power play unit, but still, it might be nice to mix things up and give the guys who have the hot hand a little bit more of a look. As far as this power play to start the third period is concerned, although again the second power play unit does look better to end the power play, it still isn't enough to get the Kraken on the board, and once again the Flyers survive yet another chance that the Kraken have to take a lead. Still, once again coming out of this power play, the Kraken continued to maintain control and pressure in the offensive zone, and 6 minutes in, it pays off as a beautiful play from McCann, controlling the puck and then regaining control of the puck as he wraps around behind the Philadelphia net. He's eventually able to get it to Lauzon, who's up in the corner by the blue line, who fires a shot and it finds its way into the back of the net, and the Kraken get the 2-1 lead in a game where it was really starting to feel like, even with all the Kraken pressure, that the next goal could be the deciding one. And for Lauzon, all that stands between him and his first goal as a Kraken player is whether or not this one might have grazed Schwartz on its way between him and Jones on its way into the net. Well, I guess I shouldn't say the only thing that stands in his way, as Philadelphia does decide to challenge this one for goaltender interference. Again, this does seem like it could be the deciding goal, so, I mean, for them, what the heck, why not try? It really doesn't seem like it is goaltender interference, but it's close enough to at least throw a dart and see if something sticks. Like I said, it is close, and although it does look like Schwartz gets more directed into Jones by the Philadelphia defenseman than he runs into him, if it had been called goaltender interference on the ice as the live play is happening, I could see it being hard for them to overturn as a goal. But they did call it a good goal on the ice, and there's certainly not enough here for them to overturn that and call it goaltender interference to take the goal away. Or at least that's what you would think, until you remember that this is the NHL, where as far as instant replay is concerned, it might as well be a flip of a freaking coin for all that it matters, as somehow they decide that they see enough in this replay that there's not even clear goaltender interference in to overturn a goal call to goaltender interference and take the goal away. I mean, even ignoring the fact that there's clearly a defenseman pushing Schwartz into Jones, as you can see right here very clearly, at the moment where Schwartz does make contact with Jones, the puck is already in the back of the net. So how in any world, even if that defenseman isn't there and this is just Schwartz and Jones, the contact between the two of them causes this goal to happen? I cannot explain to you whatsoever, because again, when the contact happens, the puck already in the net. The refs, though, clearly seem to think that they have an explanation. Not that they have to give us anyone, all they have to do is skate to center ice and say, no goal. Because clearly what they're thinking here is, I don't know about you, but this game is clearly starting to become too much about these players. And we are here too, we deserve to be part of the show. What else are these fans paying to see? And so, just like that, it's still 1-1. And Lauzon has his first goal as a Kraken and first goal of the season taken off the board. And I know Lauzon has not been the fan favorite necessarily that Tanev was, to say the very least, and while he has deserved some of the ire that he's drawn from some fans with some questionable plays that he's consistently made from time to time throughout games, he also, whenever he does make a good play, just cannot seem to catch a break at any point this season, and that just continues with this. And then, to rub salt into the wound, shortly after Lauzon has his first goal of the season robbed by some poor officiating, he gets sent to the penalty box on a very ticky-tack roughing call, especially considering some of the things that they were letting go between these two teams throughout the course of this game. I don't know what Lauzon did to this ref's family, but I have to imagine it's something along the lines of stealing their kids' Christmas presents or something, because this was just ridiculous. Fortunately, for the second time in a row, the Kraken penalty kill is able to do its job very effectively, doing a good job of killing this penalty off. Though, coming off of it, Philadelphia, for really the first time in the game, is able to get a period of sustained pressure in the offensive end and get a few shots off on Grubauer. This is more of just evening up the momentum of the game as it starts to become more back and forth throughout the rest of the game, but the Kraken did seem to be thrown off by that whole officiating thing that decided to happen. At this point, the refs have already made their impact on the game, but at least one wrong can get righted before the game ends, and as the Kraken push back on that Philadelphia pressure coming off of their power play, that is able to happen, as chaos in the Philadelphia end sees the puck find its way onto the stick of a wide open Adam Larsson, who slowly skates towards the Philadelphia net, drawing the defense towards him, and Larsson, staring down Jones in the Philly net as only he can do, decides to not shoot it, but pass it out to Lauzon on the side, who now is wide open himself, and with all the time in the world, he's able to pick his spot and fire off a shot which beats Jones again. Once again, it's into the back of the net, and once again for Lauzon, he is on the board for the Kraken for the first time. And this time, there's nobody within miles of Jones, so there's no possible way that the refs can take this one away from him. Unfortunately, 15 seconds off the ensuing faceoff, it's 2-2, as JVR gets lost behind the Kraken defense in the back door. The puck finds its way to him, and he roofs it to tie up the game. I mean, the stadium announcer hadn't even had a chance to read off the Lauzon goal yet, so as the puck gets dropped after the JVR goal, or the second JVR goal now at this point, he's stuck awkwardly trying to read off the Lauzon goal in his excited Seattle Kraken goal voice, while the entire arena is still in shock with the fact that the game is tied and coming off a Flyers goal. Yeah, just great. The remaining 5 minutes of the game do stay scoreless, so we do get to overtime with the game still tied at 2, even with the Kraken having dominated the vast majority of this game, but they allow the Flyers to stick around and somehow survive up until overtime, and then with the game now at 3-on-3, although the Kraken do get the first 4 shots off on goal, still looking for their first overtime or shootout win, the first shot going the other way for the Flyers is a breakaway for Provorov, and he is able to again get past Johansson to get on the breakaway and then deke around Grubauer and end the game, with the Flyers winning 3-2 in overtime in a game that really they had no business winning, but the refs and then the Kraken allow them to do it. So yes, at the end of this game, it does kind of feel like the Kraken end up getting robbed in this one because of the poor officiating that takes a goal off the board for Seattle in a game that goes to overtime. But at the same time, they also weren't able to hold a lead at home in the third period for more than 15 seconds. So even if the refs did take it away from them at one point, they took it away from themselves a little bit later. And look, I know there are some of you out there who want to remain optimistic at this point, and I get it. I wish I could be fully right there with you. And in this game, again, there's some silver linings to look at if that's where you're at. Again, as I've said a number of times throughout this video, the Kraken dominated the control of play in this game, having all sorts of puck possession time, controlling the Corsi and advanced stats and all of that, and even the shots off on goal where they outshot the Flyers 36-22, I think it was, or something pretty big in the Kraken favor. Unfortunately, while the Kraken do continue to dominate all of those peripheral stats, the one stat that they really continue to struggle with is goals, and most importantly, scoring more goals than the opponent, which is kind of the most important one. And sadly, the fact of the matter is that we're now at the point in the season, and honestly, well past the point in the season, where the Kraken really need to start getting things turned around in a hurry if they do want to make things interesting at any point before, well, the draft lottery. But I guess I can give it one more night since this was the first game of a back-to-back, so they do play again tomorrow night, or by the time you're watching this, probably tonight. And depending on how that game goes, then we can start to talk about where we go from here with what has been a disappointing first half of this first Kraken season, though, again, at least we have a Kraken season to watch. Of course, with the added bummer that the World Juniors has now also been canceled due to COVID, so we don't even get to watch Matty Beniers play, unless you watch Michigan hockey. But yeah, we'll just cut it off here and get to the next one so I can save some energy for that one importantly. So if you have made it to this point, thank you very much for watching. If you did like or enjoy this video, there are buttons for that kind of stuff down below that I would appreciate you using. And of course, I'd also love to hear your comments, or maybe what Kraken related gifts you got over the holidays down in the comments section. Until next time, stay safe out there, be good to each other, and go Kraken.